Of course, a little late. We are going to move into our next presentation, which is our group that worked with the Cascadia Climate Action, CCA, all around urban forestry health. So I'm going to turn it over to you all.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our presentation today. We'll be talking with you about the importance of community engagement in urban forestry for climate change mitigation. And our project was done with Cascadia Climate Action. My name is Madison, and my other group members are Michaela, Montana, and Mikaela. As a quick run through for our presentation, today we're going to be doing an introductory to urban forestry, showing our method and results, some of our next steps, conclusions, and then a few closing thoughts. For this project, our research question was what engagement opportunities are available in the Seattle region to maximize the health of urban forests. Some objectives that we created were to contribute an accessible platform for those interested in volunteering for these programs, and we wanted them to be able to pick an organization based on their own individual goals, abilities, and interests, because sometimes it can be overwhelming how many opportunities are available and how to find these. This matters because as we increase access, we increase volunteer numbers, and this spreads awareness of the importance of urban forests and overall creates an impact on climate mitigation. Cascadia Climate Action is founded by Mary Manis, and their mission is to assist the public in getting informed, involved, and taking action on climate issues. One example of this is their one-stop calendar of climate events shown below. As you can see, they put up a good amount of events being taken place in the Seattle community, both in person and online, and it's very easy to filter through and find opportunities and events to attend. So you may be asking yourself, what is an urban forest? An urban forest is defined as an area with trees, plants, shrub, or greenery of any kind that can be found within an urban city. Urban forests are important because they help us to mitigate climate change, including heat island effects. They connect people to their environments. They foster relationships within the communities, add natural beauty to our urban areas, and provide a plentiful amount of health benefits.
So this brings us into our methods. We had 3 categories that we were focused on during this project. These were writing the interview questions, conducting interviews, and then summarizing those responses. Our main objectives for these were all to ultimately gain a strong understanding of the organizations that we interviewed and to condense what we learned so that it's accessible for potential volunteers in line with CCA's mission. So why do we choose interviewing over other modes of data collection? Interviewing allows for a dialogue, follow-up questions, and personal connection. And this really allowed us to get the most genuine and thorough answers from our interviewees, and it gave us a good idea of who they are and what their organizations stand for. So the first step was to write the interview questions. We broke this down by starting with creating a basic set of interview questions that can be applied to any organization. We then conducted research at each organization using their websites and their online presence. Then using our basic set of questions, we identified where the gaps in basic information were, and we used that to inform our personalized question lists, which included questions that were open-ended, dug deeper into their values, and clarified the information that we learned. We then conducted interviews. We had to start by contacting the organizations and assigning responsibilities within our group, things such as note-taking, asking questions, sending the Zoom, and we rotated this for experience. During the interviews, we learned how to maintain the flow of conversation, so making sure we were asking questions during times that made sense during the conversation. And we also learned how to make space for our interviewees to give their full, thoughtful responses, but also how to keep control of the interviews and keep it moving. Here we have a list of everyone we had the pleasure of interviewing this quarter in the order that we interviewed them. We started with Freeway Estates Community Orchard, then moved on to Tree Pack, Proterra, Grow It Forward Restoration, Plant Amnesty, Trees for Seattle, and WSU Forest Health Watch. And on the right-hand side, we have all the names of the people we got to interview and the dates. Here we have a very short clip to give you an idea of what these interviews look like.
You know, I think people really feel a great sense of personal connection to the environment when they volunteer for us.
I think it really comes down to the fact that people feel we can kind of cultivate like a sense of ownership in our communities.
I think you like the people you meet in plant animals. We're involved in things that really make you feel good. You know, they feed your soul. So if your soul's a little hungry, come on over.
Right. And then, of course, once the interviews were finished, we had to summarize the responses. Main parts of this was putting ourselves in the shoes of potential volunteers and determining what questions they would have when they go to the CCA website. We then also learned a lot during this interview process, so we had to find ways that we could turn this into tools to give the CCA. And this all culminated in summary Q&A pages of each organization, a table, and surveys, all of which will be expanded upon later.
So after completing our interviews and gathering all of our data, we created this little word cloud here, highlighting some of the key phrases that were used in the interviews. You'll see welcoming, community, restoration, education, health, all keywords that were talked about in our interviews. And some of our results were, one, that all of these organizations are very accessible and welcoming to people with a variety of experience. So no one has to come in knowing exactly what to do. There are many opportunities for people. Another key finding was that urban forests are not only vital for the health of our environment, but they're also vital for the health of our communities. They provide a way for people to gather, to hold events, to meet new people through these volunteer opportunities, and they're just a way to foster new relationships within our community. Lastly, we also found that volunteering in these urban forests helps to foster relationships between people and the land that we live on. We heard many times from people in these organizations that the people who volunteer often come back again and say that they have grown a greater connection with the land that they live on. So once we had finished our interviews, we decided to create a final table with just kind of some of the general information that we thought would be important for people visiting CCA's website to see. We included information like the lead contact of each organization, volunteer opportunities, the commitment level, special events, and COVID precautions, just things that we thought would be important for people to decide what organization works best for them. And then from there, we included a Learn More section. And this is where we created about one-page summaries for each organization that we interviewed. We did this in a Q&A format so people could find the information easily and determine if this was an organization that they'd be interested in volunteering for.
So although the goals of our project were mostly to be achieved this quarter, we hope that the work we have done this past quarter will create a good foundation for CCA to continue this research on their own or with future Sustainability Studio students. For CCA's website, we created the informational table and summaries of our findings from each organization's interview. We hope that the information will be easily accessible, increase volunteer outreach for the organizations, will make information on urban forests be more widely known, and overall help people become involved in the fight to mitigate climate change. We also created 2 surveys that CCA will put on their website. They are linked on this slide, and then on the next slide are a few images of what these surveys look like. The first survey is for organizations that we did not have time to interview this quarter that are also involved in urban forestry and are looking for volunteers. This is a way for organizations to answer the questions without needing to attend an interview. We hope that the information from this survey can also be added to the informational table on CCA's website. The second survey is for volunteers to report back on their involvement with urban forestry and their work with these organizations. Organizations and CCA can use this information to improve overall outreach and accessibility. To conclude, over the course of the quarter, We were able to successfully answer our research questions and explore many urban forestry volunteer opportunities in the Seattle area. We met our learning objectives and created a solid basis for CCA to continue research on this topic in the future. We came into this project with little experience in this type of research and conducting interviews, so our project scope developed over the quarter as we got more comfortable with this type of work. We gained more experience with the interviews and became more comfortable talking and asking the right types of questions to best suit our research goals. We have 4 main recommendations for Cascadia Climate Action. The first includes setting up a volunteer with the organizations presented in the table we have made. The second is for CCA to utilize the Google survey for organizations, and the third is the survey for volunteers. The last is to find a way for users to search for key terms in the table on the website, such as low commitment, physical work, or policy. This slide, we have the links to all the websites of the organizations that we interviewed. And this is a group photo from our first interview. Thank you so much for listening. We would like to thank Cascadia Climate Action, specifically Mary and Lily, for working with us on this project and giving us the opportunity to work alongside a great organization. We would also like to thank all the organizations that we interviewed for taking the time to meet with us and being part of our project. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask us now. Here are some of our references.
I'm kind of curious on how you guys felt doing interviews and what skills you think you've gained from that.
Yeah, I think at first it was pretty nerve-wracking for all of us, but most of the interviews we tried to do it together. So it was really nice to be able to rely on each other and work with one another, making sure that if there were any awkward silences or anything, one of us could fill it up. But yeah, I think probably what I learned the most was just kind of going with the flow of the conversation. We would have questions set up and prepared, so we would go into the interviews prepared, but we would kind of also just go with the flow of the conversation and ask questions that we thought were appropriate for the time.
Yeah, it was really great to see how the 4 of us kind of got into a rhythm throughout the quarter and got more comfortable with speaking with one another. And I think that really reflected how well we did in the interviews.
Yeah, at the beginning of the quarter, we were using 4 people for every interview. And I think our last 3 interviews, we only had 2 people. So that shows that we were able to gain that confidence throughout the quarter.
Nice job, group. I have a question for you all. This project is interesting to me because it's like a small pie slice of something that could become a really, really large kind of initiative, and that's an exciting opportunity. And I'm curious if in any of your interviews and conversations or in any of your group conversations, you kind of uncovered or talked about what you think some of the current barriers to volunteering are. I think a lot of people maybe want to volunteer, but they're like, oh, I don't know what opportunity there is. Were there any other barriers, or do you really think giving people, making that information of opportunities accessible is going to open the floodgates?
I think having the opportunities listed is really important, so that's easy to find. But what we really learned is every organization that we interviewed, there were 7, they were all so different. Maybe 2 of them were similar. Sometimes they would partner, but at the end of the day, the opportunities they had for volunteers were radically different. So I think people often get frightened that they're going to enter an organization and have this burden to volunteer somewhere that they're not actually having fun, or they're not up to par with the skills that you might need. So sorting through all these organizations, the table is really beneficial for this because you can see different skill levels. Some of them, they're oh, you can just walk in, have no background experience, and we'll get you going. But other times it's a higher commitment level. So this really clarifies that for people interested.
Yeah, and we also saw that a lot of the organizations that we interviewed do have limited outreach initiatives right now. So people like CCA who are giving all these opportunities available on a platform are really useful. There were a lot of organizations that were like, we'll take volunteers for our events, but we also need people to run social media and people to make flyers and post them everywhere and things like that. And we also found there were a couple organizations that benefited by COVID having them put classes online. They got more involvement in that way. Just like regionally, people from Canada can come take a class on pruning.
Thank you. Are there any last questions for this group? All right, thank you all. We are going to move on to our next presentation, who was with our group working with Yes Farm. Who do we have screen sharing? Is it Julia?
Yes, give me 1 second.
Eric.
Oh, here we go. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our project on mapping the farm, creating effective communication and engaging with a diverse community. Here is a brief agenda of our talk today. We're going to go through a client introduction, methodology and process, research components, final design, and our next steps. My name is Julia. Our team consists of me, Daniela, Mia, and Vanessa. And let's dive into our project.
Mia, we can't hear you.
Are you there, Mia?
Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now?
We can't hear you anymore. I see your mouth moving, but don't hear the sound.
Right, I think I should be good now. So before we talk about who Yes Farm is, we wanted to give some context as to where they are located, since they're actually right in our backyard. As you can see on the map here, Yes Farm is located just south of the UW campus and of downtown Seattle, and they're in the Yesler Terrace neighborhood, which is about a 10 to 15 minute drive from us here at UW. So now, who is Yes Farm? Yes Farm is a branch off of a Seattle nonprofit called Black Farmers Collective, and their mission is to create a space for the community, and especially for BIPOC members of the community, to come together and learn and grow food together. And Yes Farm does this by engaging with a variety of community partners to work with BIPOC and utilize sustainable agricultural techniques. And as we saw on the last map, Yes Farm is located in the Yesler Terrace neighborhood, which has a population where over half identify as non-white. So these importance are all especially important in this area for working towards addressing inequities faced by communities of color, and also to cultivate a sense of community and inclusion in an area of Seattle that is predominantly BIPOC. So the primary objective of our project was to create an engaging map for Yes Farm to serve as welcoming and explanatory signage for the farm and for visitors who might be walking through. The map that we designed is targeted at communicating with a diverse community through easily readable icons in English and Spanish.
Now, going into our methodology, because of the qualitative nature of our project, our research had to reflect that. And we sought to foster ways to promote community engagement through the Yes Farm. And our preliminary research reflects our design concepts. We also met continually as we constructed our project with our clients to refine our designs and make sure that all of our goals were being met. And here are some of our research findings that affected our final design. One of them simply acknowledges that having signs promotes your community engagement. And also treating the design process as a marketing strategy allows us to create a process that can be replicated for future engagement. We also found that environmental education is very necessary, and signs can help bridge the gap between public and nonprofit sectors.
After conducting some of that preliminary research, our group took a trip to the farm to meet with Ray and Hannah, who were our clients for this project, and also to do a walkthrough of the farm just so that we could get a sense of the layout and the various projects that were going on. So the slide just has a few photos of our first visit out there. And moving on to the actual design for our project, on this slide you can see a rough visual of the process that we went through when creating our final draft. We of course made a lot of little edits along the way as well, but these 3 drafts are the main ones that we presented to our clients throughout the quarter. For draft 1 on the left there, you can see that we had a really basic outline for where we wanted the various map elements to be placed, but nothing had really been refined yet. At this stage in the process, we also knew that we wanted to utilize Canva to create the full banner design, but we hadn't figured out what program we wanted to use to draw the actual map. And in this stage, again, we really just wanted to get an idea of placement so that we could bring that to our clients and get their feedback on the design. As we moved from draft 1 to draft 2, this was definitely our biggest stage in the design process. At this point, we had decided that we wanted to use Photoshop to create the design for the map. So you can see we went from just a kind of a screen grab from Google Images to a lot more refined design for that. And here we also started to play around with some various icons for the map and for our key. And our client also provided us with a PDF of their logo, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner there. In this stage, we were also collaborating as a group to choose the various fonts that you see on the poster and also mess around with the color and try to get that to match the Yes Farm logo. And then for our final draft, I won't go into too much detail here. In our following slides, we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into our editing process for that final draft and also how our research findings that Julia touched on contributed to that design.
Yeah, so let's dive into how our research is reflected in our design. One thing that you just might find right off the bat is how we engage with Yes Farm's logo by having the same color palette that allows it to flow really well. And yeah, we're going to talk about some other elements too.
So we made use of both native speakers and web translators to create the Spanish names on the signage. This not only makes Spanish speakers be and feel more included in the community, but there's also like a greater sense of inclusion for other members of other minority groups, seeing that a secondary language is incorporated on the signage as well.
Here on the bottom, we also chose to place the social media elements lower because we wanted to keep in mind the concept of easy access for all that visit or stumble upon the farm. And here you can also see we included their primary social media platform, which happened to be Facebook, along with a traditional URL link and a new QR code that will directly send community members to their website.
And finally, we realized that not everybody who is visiting the farm is going to be able to see their native language represented on the signage. And there's also a large population of children that walk through that we want to engage with through this signage as well. So for those reasons, we included the visual icons that I touched on in the previous slide as part of our final design. And as we wrapped up our signage design, we were also working as a group to come up with some next steps for Yes Farm based both on our research and on opportunities for expanding on our project. So our first recommendation that we have here, when we initially met with Ray and Hannah at Yes Farm, we had talked about a variety of different signage opportunities for the farm. And due to time constraints, we weren't able to tackle all of these ideas. However, one which we would really love to see implemented in the future is a walking tour of the farm. Our map can kind of serve as a layout of the farm, and we envision having smaller signs placed at each of the different sections of the farm with information on the various projects. And on this side, you can see an example of what one of these smaller signs might look like. This one in particular is a template for the Yes Farm plot section of the farm.
And expanding on this sort of walking tour will really help visitors to engage with and learn about the different projects going on. And it also provides an opportunity for additional signage to be created in the future as the farm expands. Because social media is vital in sustaining constant support for Yes Farm's mission, one recommendation we encourage to our client is to continually stay active on all social media platforms. This will allow potential members of the community to learn about upcoming events and volunteering opportunities. And also keeping that in mind, we focused key elements like a link to Yes Farm's digital handle for their Facebook on the sign because we recognize it to be their most active social media. And here you can see we included a screen grab of their current activities with a picture of farm members uploaded, along with posts about events happening, like cookouts they do using their own produce that are open to all. We also chose to include both a QR code and a traditional URL link to ensure that we aren't creating a gap in a multi-generational world with people living on different levels of technology access. And additionally to that, creating another option other than a QR code ensures that those who don't have access to a compatible device can still be able to participate in engaging with the farm. And continuing with the focus of accessibility, Daniela will now explain the next recommendation.
Yes, so we also recommend the implementation of multiple languages present on signage so that the variety of different community members can be reached as well. As stated in the City of Seattle official website, besides English, Spanish is the most widely spoken language in the Seattle area, with Chinese in third place. There is also a large percentage of Somali and Amharic speakers who live in the area. Between these constraints of our project, we were able to develop Spanish translations for a portion of the signage, but in the future, we envision an opportunity to include these languages on signage as well, and we'll provide the farm directors and managers with templates of the original signs that can be edited for the future.
All right, and that wraps up our presentation. One more thing I'm going to add is we actually were able to print out our sign, and we're really excited to deliver that. I think Vanessa might be able to show us if she has it.
Yeah, it's 6 feet and I am not 6 feet. So we'll see how I do. But with the help of the mill on campus, we were able to make this sign, and we chose to keep some white left over just so when Yes Farm puts grommets on, they have kind of a little bit of wiggle room to their addition. So I don't know if you guys were able to see that.
Yeah, looks awesome. And with that, any questions we're happy to take. You can follow this QR code to learn more and get involved at Yes Farm. And we want to thank Ray and Hannah again for just being awesome clients this quarter. Yeah, Ray.
Yes, thanks so much, everybody, for doing this. I'm excited you're able to print that sign. We're looking forward to getting it and putting it up. Yeah, it was a really fun to be able to work with the students. They mentioned that there was a little bit of a time constraint in terms of making those signs. I'll tell you what it was, is that we didn't get the information to them quick enough. So they would have had a few more, but we're going to work on that. So thank you very much. We're taking your advice in elevating social media. So we're going to get one of our folks that's been, we're expanding our crew. And so social media is going to be part of that. So I really appreciate that. And then I will say that now that we have this base, we can bring this text and this signage to our partners, the Seattle Housing Authority. And I'm hoping that they'll be able to help us with translation, right? Because there's lots of languages spoken in the area. So that's really a big thing. So, I mean, again, I just want to thank you. I don't really have any questions. We've talked quite a bit about it, but I do want to thank you and Alexa for, supporting us in this effort, and everyone is welcome to come down and volunteer. It's open for everybody. There was an earlier question in another project about volunteerism. And I think we're lucky that we have an outdoor space, people can volunteer and have fun. And so I think that's what brings our volunteers. So if you're trying to set up volunteers, really trying to make folks welcome, make them feel like they did something important and are part of something. And I think those would be our, our recommendations for Yes Farm. Hannah would be here, but she's actually on the farm with a group of volunteers. So that's what we're all about, is trying to grow this food for community. So thanks very much. Really exciting to be part of this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right, like we said, we had an awesome time working with you this quarter.
Awesome. Are there any other questions for this group? All right, well, nice job, everyone. I am very excited to see you actually got that sign printed. That is awesome. I think I told you, I don't know if I've ever had a group actually that did design work, get it produced. So super exciting to see that that's a resource for students on campus, and that you're able to share that with the farm. So
yeah. One thing I will say about the mill is I did think it was going to be free, and when we got there it was a small charge. I think it was like $28, but compared to all other printing options, it's so much cheaper. I think we had one quote that was like $150.
So a pretty remarkable difference.
Well, we'll make sure we pay for that, since I guess there was no budget from the class. So we don't need you to swallow that piece, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, nice job, group. So we are on to our final presentation for the day, which looked at reducing greenhouse gas emissions in residential homes in Seattle. We've already got our screen share. Alina is set. You guys are good to go.
Hello, everyone. So this quarter, my team and I, we worked let's see. Okay, sorry for that. We worked with the People for Climate Action in the 40-star district, Democrats, and Environmental Caucus. And so on that team, it was me, Jasmine, Nina, Barb, and Alina. And so for our presentation today, we are going to be talking about the scope of our project, the methods we use, the global case studies we looked at, the local case studies, the incentives, the programs and policies, and the recommendations that we came up based off our presentation.
So for the scope of our project, it was how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in single-family homes. So a key component of answering our research question was to identify what Seattle can do to move towards sustainable practices in pre-existing single-family homes.
Our method was research. We divided research into 3 parts: case studies, incentives, and programs. For the case studies, we researched policy locally and globally on residential buildings. For incentives, there are 3 types of incentives: tax credits, rebates, and loan to help improving residential buildings. For the last one, it's program-based research, including what Seattle has been done so far to reduce greenhouse gas emission and what kind of bills and ordinance could help. For global case studies, greenhouse gas emissions from homes account for between 25 to 27% of global emissions. Globally, this program of work is too important to fail, so it makes sense to conduct a research of how different countries are approaching the problem to highlight opportunity to learn from one another. Our global case studies were based in Europe. In broad perspective, European Union established energy performance of buildings directed to support member countries to improve building energy efficiency. In their policy, there's a system called minimum energy performance standard to require the renovation of the worst performing buildings. Following this policy, residential buildings should be renovated to perform better by 2030. United Kingdom has policy called occupant behavior It's about how they respond to the design, systems, and controls offered in homes, and it's central to how well buildings perform. Behavior affecting performance, including heating and ventilation systems, such as thermostat adjustment and window opening, the use of electrical appliance and lighting, hot water usage, and variable patterns of occupancy as well. The sixth carbon budget in residential buildings is about decarbonization of heat, including gas cooking, and garden machinery, behavior change, fabric efficiency, and fuel switching to drive the transition to net zero carbon buildings. For the Germany, it's called KfW, which is a German state-owned investment and development bank. It has been supporting energy saving in residential buildings for the past 10 years. It's been over 4 million housing units, has either been built or refurbished to make them more energy efficient during this period. KfW has issued close to Europe dollar up to 100 billion in loans or grants to builders and renovators as part of the energy efficient construction and refurbishment programs. For France, French government provides financial support for improving the energy performance of property owners with insufficient energy efficient house. It called France Green Home Retrofit Policy. Since 2020, the new grant-based system superseded the previous tax credit-based system. Depends on taxable income and the potential energy savings that could arise from major home. This policy grants typical cover up to 40% of the retrofit bill.
So for local case studies, we looked at two different ones. The first being a retrofit of a house built in 1915, located in Dayton, Washington. And the yearly utility bill prior to the retrofit cost $3,500. And after the retrofit, they were projected to save $2,375 a year. And the total cost of the overall project was $11,500, which is a lot. So they figured out that it would take 5 to 6 years for the costs to even out. And then for the next case study we looked at, it was the Bullitt Center located in Capitol Hill, which is a living building with zero carbon emissions or waste. And the purpose of this building was to be a model for 21st century sustainability. And it includes radiant in-floor heating and cooling, composting toilets, natural ventilation, and passive cooling.
I looked into 3 major incentive options: tax credits, rebates, and loans, to see which is most effective. So the advantages of tax credits is that it can cover a broad range of sustainable options under one application, providing homeowners with the opportunity to make multiple switches at once, and one application also leads to higher completion rates. Unused tax credits also can be carried over for multiple years, allowing for a larger time frame of installation and to earn money back. The disadvantages of tax credits is that they can't be collected until after tax returns are filed in the year following the purchase, which isn't efficient. It is also common for these programs to cap participants by only allowing a certain percentage to be offset. For rebate programs, advantages are that it offers a tax-free cash reimbursement, as the IRS views rebates as a reduction in the price paid rather than an income. It also allows for a long duration of coverage with options for various forms of sustainable technology. However, it typically does not offer any reimbursement on sales tax, so you may not receive the maximum amount of money. Delays and mix-ups are also extremely common with this option. For loan programs, it allows participants to receive money upfront. It can be flexible in terms of payback costs and lengths. However, interest rates can be high as there is no set rule. The biggest issue with loan programs are that they are inequitable, as it restricts those who have smaller incomes from applying, or if it is allowed, companies can inflate interest rates. Also, sometimes companies can add additional fees if trying to repay the loan before the end of a loan term, especially if there is a fixed interest rate.
There is numerous programs and policies that we researched that could be applicable to our goal. Among those programs is the TNUP program, which is a current incentive program to assist in accelerating Seattle building owners to convert their buildings to be more energy and water efficient. There's also the Green Up program, which is a program that you can choose to participate by matching your electricity bill, and you can do this through either a match or a block. And so a match would be matching your electricity bill, or a block, which you can contribute to with as little as $1. And this is significant in the fact that the more participants there are, then it helps to create more renewable energy options and helps to modernize the renewable energy grid. So City Light currently has a solar program, but even if you don't have a solar grid, you can still participate through the community solar option. So they credit your electricity bill for every kilowatt hour spent to their power grid. And through this, there's either the net metering or meter aggregation. And so for net metering, it's the credits for the energy that you produce. You can also qualify for the meter aggregation, which helps you share the excess generation that you from your grid to help others reduce their utility bills. And there's also the program which gives you a rebate for converting from gas to a heat pump within City Light. And then, so on the legislative level, Washington State is currently working to pass and amend laws to achieve zero emissions. However, Seattle specifically differs from Washington State by including additional ordinances that has the potential to push Seattle to be a leader in the state for achieving those zero emissions.
The first recommendation we have is to lobby for rebate and tax credit programs, as loan programs exclude individuals with lower income amounts and are less attractive to homeowners. It is also important to lobby for a tax exemption with only one application process. Conducting outreach to successful programs around the US, such as New York's Solar Electric Tax Program and Illinois' Renewable Energy Rebate Program, would be a great next step.
And so for the second recommendation, we wanted to lobby for retrofitting opportunities. So we believe that our clients should lobby local and state governments to incentivize retrofitting single-family homes using the 1915 house case study as a successful example. And then we also believe that our clients should advocate for energy efficient certification programs, such as the Living Building Challenge, which the Bullitt Center is a product of, and it's possible to incorporate aspects of this building into single-family homes.
And lastly, we want to give a big thank you to our clients, Dave and Robin. Is there any questions?
So I was going to ask what your recommendations were, but then you had a whole slide on that, so that was great. I'm wondering this is great work, and it was really fascinating to me to see it all. And you know, sometimes I look at it and it seems so far from where we are to where we need to be. But I think that there's a lot of ideas here that people could actually make use of and that we could follow up on. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this group and the work they did this quarter? All right, then I have one question. I won't keep us all here too long, but I'm curious. So your group did a lot of in-depth research. What challenges did you face as you tried to distill all of that information and really come to your key takeaways?
So I think the biggest issue was at first figuring out who was going to do what, and specifically what we were going to research. Because in the beginning it was kind of vague. We weren't sure like what our clients specifically wanted. So after we kind of got a clearer idea of that, we each had like our own individual research. But for me, at least, I did the local case study research, and it's impossible to find like any information or case studies on houses that have been retrofitted that are like older houses. And like the example I found was in Dayton, Washington, which is not even close to Seattle. So I was hoping I could find more on that, but I wasn't. So then I just decided to look at the Bullitt Center because I knew of it and I knew it was a successful example. So I was glad I was able to incorporate that. Yes, Robin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know there are houses that people have done this for in Seattle. And so I think what your experience really points to is the need to get them out there and get them documented so other people can see them and so other people can see that this is possible.
Yeah, definitely.
I can add a little bit on to like the challenge. I think the biggest challenge was a lot of the things we looked at apply to buildings and newer homes in Seattle, and not really like what we were looking at specifically the pre-existing. So finding how we can incorporate those incentives that they have for those buildings into the single family home aspect.
Great. Thank you all so much. Really nice job to our final group. So that brings us to the end of our presentations today. I just want to say one last time, a huge round of applause and congratulations to the students on their projects this quarter. It was kind of a funny, like virtual, half in person quarter. So we faced some of those challenges, but I'm always so impressed by the way that students come into class excited to learn and grow and take on hard projects. You know, for many of them, it's their first time working either with a client or in kind of this big consultancy role where you're really taking the lead on problem solving and navigating ambiguity, which is something we talk a lot about. And I think they've all done a great job with that. And of course, I want to wrap up too by thanking our clients once again. Like I said at the beginning, this class would not be possible without our client partners. So thank you so, so much for your willingness to work with the students and give them a chance to learn and grow. As I mentioned before too, I'll be sending a few follow-up emails just to lay out, you know, what happens next. But primarily you can watch for an email from me next week that has the students' final reports, their slide deck, and a link to these presentations. So that's all I have for today. I will stay on Zoom until everyone hops off. Students, I know we don't see each other anymore before your final reports are due, but know that I am still available and a resource for you as you're wrapping up that work. So please let me know if any questions arise. Otherwise, I hope you all have a fabulous rest of your week and a wonderful spring. Please let me know if there are any questions. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.